Through another's eyes, Johannes' perspective. Chapter 1. The beginning of the spiral. Johannes had always admired Elias. He was sharp, dedicated, a true behavioral scientist. But in the months leading up to Elias' self-diagnosis, something changed. The confident, analytical man Johannes knew began second-guessing himself. At first it was small things. Elias pausing mid-conversation, staring off as if someone else was speaking to him. Then the bigger things, paranoia, obsessive note-taking, insomnia. Do you ever feel like someone else is writing your thoughts? Elias asked one evening, his voice barely above a whisper. Johannes frowned, keeping his tone light. Like intrusive thoughts? That's normal. The brain is weird. Elias' expression darkened. No, like I'm the intrusive thought. Johannes didn't know what to say. Chapter 2. The cracks deepen. Elias became obsessed with tracking his own mind. He documented patterns, analyzed his reactions, kept voice memos detailing his emotional state. If I don't study it, it will consume me, Elias had told Johannes one night. He still functioned at work, at least for a while, but then came the whispers, the voices. The moments where Elias seemed lost in a world Johannes couldn't reach. One evening, after Elias had gone quiet for hours, Johannes found him staring into a mirror. "What are you seeing?" Johannes asked cautiously. Elias turned, his expression unreadable. "I think I might not be real." Chapter 3. Childhood Shadows. Johannes had known Elias since university, but he never spoke much about childhood. One day, however, Elias shared a story about his father, a distant man who dismissed emotions as weakness. "I used to talk to myself as a kid," Elias admitted. "Made up someone who listened when no one else would." Johannes hesitated. "And does that voice still listen?" Elias looked away. "I don't know if it ever stopped." Chapter 4. First Love, First Fractures. Elias once loved a woman named Myra. Their relationship was passionate, deep, until it wasn't. She left, claiming Elias had become someone she didn't recognize. "She said I was talking to people who weren't there," Elias confessed, a bitter smile on his lips. Johannes didn't know how to respond. Chapter 5. A Glimpse of the Future. There were times when Elias seemed normal, talking about retirement, about future plans, but Johannes saw the cracks. The way Elias' hands trembled when he spoke of life he wasn't sure existed. "Do you ever wonder if we make up our futures just to cope?" Elias had asked him once. Johannes had laughed. But now he wasn't so sure. Chapter 6. The Pet That Wasn't There. Elias once told Johannes about his first pet, a dog cat, named Bruno, but when Johannes asked about it later, Elias hesitated. "Bruno?" Elias frowned. "I don't think he was real." Chapter 7. The Portugal Escape. Elias had always wanted to visit Portugal, so Johannes convinced him to go. The ocean, the fresh air, maybe it would help. But it didn't. Elias still whispered to unseen figures at night, still stared into mirrors, questioning if he was the reflection or the man standing before it. One night Elias whispered, "What if I wake up and I'm someone else?" Johannes squeezed his shoulder. "Then I'll remind you who you are." Chapter 8. Mars, the journey that wasn't. Then came the opportunity, a mission to Mars. Elias, a renowned scientist, was offered a place. Johannes was hesitant, but Elias lit up for the first time in years. A fresh start, he had said. But was Mars real, or just another layer of the dream? Chapter 9. The incident. Something happened on Mars, something Elias wouldn't explain. He spoke of shadows, of echoes, of presence watching him. "It's not isolation," Elias whispered. "It's something else." Johannes wasn't there, but he felt it from across the void. Chapter 10. Return to Earth, or not. Elias made it back home, or so Johannes thought. But then, the inconsistencies, stories that didn't align, gaps in time, moments where Elias seemed to flicker between realities. "I never left," Elias muttered one night. Johannes shivered. "What do you mean?" Elias only smiled. Chapter 11. The Truth Revealed. Johannes stood before Elias, finally understanding. It had never been Elias looking at the world through fractured glass. Elias was the fracture. "You're not real, are you?" Johannes whispered. Elias smiled, sadness in his eyes. "I tried to be." And then he was gone. Chapter 12. The Legacy. Johannes stood alone, staring at the empty space where Elias had been. The world around him was real, but Elias was not. But maybe, in some way, Elias still existed. In memories, in echoes, in the spaces between reality and the mind's desperate attempts to hold onto something slipping away. Maybe Elias was real once. Maybe that was enough.